Yeah.
And we're back. Welcome to episode 3 of the Black Sheep Thinking interview series. I'll throw it to my partner, Andrew.
Hey, welcome back, guys. Today we're here with a friend and client, Greg Richardson. Greg actually came to me in kind of an interesting way. Do you want to share a little bit? Okay, I know from my point of view what that was like, but like, how'd that occur?
It was more of an accident.
More of an accident.
Yeah.
So for context,
it wasn't really an accident. It just happened. It wasn't really planned out that way. It was actually supposed to be. I believe it was supposed to be your mother, actually.
Yeah, that's true. So I was. Greg was a real estate client of mine, and we just kind of got talking. We hit it off, and he came to me. You came to me originally because you wanted to try out an ice bath. And I think the question I asked you was why? Like, what do you want?
Yeah.
And you were searching. Like, I could see that you were searching for something.
Yeah, for sure.
And that kind of sparked the idea of working together as a coaching client.
Yeah.
And what was it that made you want to work with it? Because I asked you that question at one point.
Yeah, like, you did, right? And I couldn't come up with anything intelligent to say then either. Funny that. No, I guess it's I've tried traditional methods to feel better, I guess, to say the least, over the last 20 years.
Yeah.
And like you were saying, more so through real estate, it just kind of happened, man. Like all of a sudden one day I was standing there and there's Andrew. And I went home and I said to my wife, I go, I don't know what it is about that guy, but I like him. And I don't usually say that about guys when I meet them. Right? I really don't.
He's very flattered.
So,
very flattered.
No, seriously. And we got talking, and then the more time, spending with you, just kind of back and forth, looking at houses and just small talk here and there, I kind of realized you might be somebody that was worth talking to.
Yeah.
So, just kind of went from there. I was hesitant at first, don't get me wrong. Mm-hmm. Talking to a guy who's been going through different therapy for the better part 20 years of his life. And, I'm not saying that didn't help me, because honestly, I don't think I think I told you this before. Mm-hmm. I don't think if it wasn't for going through that process, I wouldn't have been able to choose this process.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
That's fair.
Right? We actually kind of convince clients and people in general to try a lot of things so they can see what doesn't work.
Yeah.
but why it doesn't. So it goes back, like, can we go a little bit deeper on that? Because before we get into some of your story and who you are, like, so you've tried a lot of things before. What made you invest in this? Like, what specifically, was there a moment or is there something that occurred for you that was different than anything else that you're like, you know what, I think this is worth giving it a shot?
There was no pressure to feel better.
That's a great answer.
Wow.
Really?
Yeah.
Like, I didn't feel like, oh my God, this has to be worth my while. You know what? This has to work this time. There was no anxiety with that, right?
Nice.
It just kind of happened. I don't know. For some reason, I opened up to it, and it just happened. I don't know how else to explain it.
Yeah, that's a common answer, actually. It's like we try, that's why we have this series, because it's really hard to quantify the moment for people. But they always say it's not a moment. It's just like a climb, or maybe even like a letting go process, maybe.
I always find, like, people always say they have their moments, right? Some people reach for a bottle, some people reach for a Bible, some people, you're always there. I think everyone's always reaching for something, but after a while you get tired of that, and it's nice to actually kind of have something, I don't know, fall into your lap, so to speak. Right?
Yeah.
Yep.
So why not take advantage of it?
Yep.
It was something new, something different, and I thought, it's either going to work, it's going to help me, or it's not. And honestly, it's helped me dramatically. I think most people that have spoken to me in the last 4 months, people that are actually close to me and understand me a little better, than others, they see a big difference in me. So,
Yeah.
which makes you feel pretty good.
Yeah, it does.
Let's face it.
Yeah. It's nice. It's nice when people recognize your growth.
Yeah.
And people weren't really recognizing that before, right? And not really nobody's fault. They just didn't, because it'd be like, okay, Greg's going to therapy this week. I have an appointment next week, and the week after that, and the week after that. So when do you see progress? When do things start getting better, right? And it took me a long time to realize, well, you know what? You actually are getting better, regardless of what others may think, because they see you in your bad moments, and they're like, oh, really? I don't see a difference, right? I don't get it. What are you looking at, right? And I'm standing there scratching my head going, yeah, fuck, okay, I thought I was making a difference, but maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I wasn't.
Yeah. Well, and I think one of the biggest things for you in your journey that I, at least from my point of view, what I witnessed in you is you started to see yourself differently, and that's what really started to change the catalyst, because you stopped seeing yourself as somebody who needed to be different.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I didn't focus so much anymore on not being angry, not being upset, not being, depressed, not being hurt. Those things kind of didn't really matter anymore.
Yeah.
I kind of put them in the back of the mind, type thing, and just kept telling myself, what, it's all good. It's going to work out. It doesn't matter. If it doesn't, you'll bounce back. You always do.
Yeah.
Okay?
No, well, it's like, and I think that was one thing I witnessed with you too, is like you say, if you'll bounce back, you always do. And I think we talked about that at one point, is like, how many times do you need to be convinced that you're okay, that there's nothing wrong with you? Like, how many times do you have to see that you come out the other side of even things that we judge as bad or wrong or not right or whatever, and then you get to see that, it's all happening the way it needs to happen.
Yeah.
I think that's a good segue for the people who haven't had the pleasure of meeting Greg, to kind of know a little bit about where his work and his life has come from. So
yeah. Do you mind sharing a bit of that? Like, as much as you want.
Yeah, it's very interesting.
Go back as far as you'd like. And,
loaded question.
It's going to turn into a big long therapy session.
Kind of, but for those who are watching, I think they'll connect with a large part of what you've been through and who you are.
Yeah. Okay. Give me a second.
Yeah, no rush. Thank you. Before you say anything, I'll just let everyone listening. I had the blessing of being able to come in. Andrew had come in and meet you, and it was one of the. I don't get to do that very often. We don't usually bring people in. I had a chance to sit and hear you out, and I'm really thankful you're here today, because I think what you've been through and who you are now is really will touch a lot of people, but also I think there's a lot of people out there who've dealt with a segment of that in one way or another, the things you've experienced and the fact that you are who you are. So I look forward to getting into that later, but
yeah, I don't, to be honest, I don't want to go into a whole lot of details on things.
No, you don't have to.
Yeah.
Just give me a generality. First of all, what do you do for a living? What did you do for a living?
Well, let's go back. Actually.
Okay, cool. We're going to go back. Good.
Yeah, we'll go way back. Okay. It all started in a small little town. It was my mother and I until I was 7, 8 years old. Yeah, that was tough. I was lucky enough to have a lot of aunts and uncles that kind of took me under their wing, type thing, because I didn't have any brothers or sisters growing up. My father came along, like I said, when I was 8. He adopted me when I was 12. Other than that, it was pretty typical for most part. Got to enjoy some of the finer things of life. Played a little ice hockey, some baseball, little sporting activities, things like that. And then, let me see. Early teenage years, things kind of started to take a turn for the worse for me. had some unwanted people enter my life that kind of broke my spirit, we'll say, for a while. And of course, I kept that hidden away. Started drinking when I was young. I think I was about 12 or younger. So that probably didn't help things, you know. Other than that, things, I don't know, typical teenager things, got involved in Army cadets, things like that. Had in my mind that I was going to go in the military, have the military life. Never really cared much for school. So, you know, there was always that, getting into fights all the time in school, always getting suspended, shit always happening. Typical, you know, teenage boys, it happens a lot, no big deal. Then later on in my teenage years, I kind of realized I wasn't going anywhere. Started losing some influential people in my life. Decided it was time to run from that. Wasn't very good at facing my problems back then. And moved away. Thought I need to get out of this small town. So when I was, 22, I moved away up to Kingston. Quickly realized I didn't like the city. Hated the city. So after doing nothing but what I did through my early years as a young adult, working in bars and, you know, pounding nails for a living, you know, whether it was building barns or things like that, just picking up odd jobs here and there, no real education. Dropped out of high school my last year. Let me see. Where do we go from here?
Because you, like you said, you bounced in the bars for a little while.
Yeah, I started working in the bars when I was like 18. I was still in high school and working 40 hours a week, and I was bouncing in the bars because I wasn't, it's funny, I wasn't old enough to serve alcohol, but I was old enough to throw the drunks out, right? So yeah, and I was a big kid, right?
You're still a big kid.
I mean, you might not be able to tell if you're watching and you see us sitting on the couch. How tall are you, Greg?
Yeah, 6'7".
6'7", yeah. He's a big man, so he's the right guy to have as a bouncer, I guess.
Yeah. So and then after I moved up here to Kingston, I quickly realized there was only a few things up here to do. You can either work in the restaurant, service, bar industry, or you can go work in the prison service, right?
Yeah.
So I thought, well, I'm here. I'll get an education. Managed to get my grade 12. Enrolled into St. Lawrence College to go through the correctional officer program. And I think I lasted about a hot 6 weeks before I drank away about $5,000 in tuition money. You know?
Yep.
I realized I wasn't there yet. I couldn't do it. And I really didn't want that job.
Right.
Okay? Back then, I realized I didn't want to do it. But whatever, I didn't really know what I wanted, I guess. So I just kind of kept plugging away and working in bars and things like that. And then my son came along. That changed pretty much everything. I stopped hanging around with the people I was hanging around with in the bar scene. Stopped doing some of the things I was doing. Tried to be more responsible, but still wasn't getting anywhere financially or, work-wise. Nothing that was worth bragging about, that was for sure. So, and in doing so, I was bearing all the issues I had from the past and things like that. And I guess I didn't realize it, but over time I was just getting angrier and angrier all the time, right? And then I thought, okay, get your shit together, go get a better job. Then my daughter came along, and kids changed me.
And they changed many of us.
It's
amazing.
Yeah, it was crazy, actually. I didn't think it was going to happen the way it did, but it did.
Yeah, and for the record, I've heard you talk about your kids. I haven't got to meet any of them yet, but you can tell just the way you talk about your kids. Like, you are an excellent dad, man.
Oh, thanks, man. it's been a long road. I've had a lot of help from some good people, but yeah, it was tough. It was tough when they were younger. But anyhow, so yeah, I ended up, 2000, yeah, it was around 2000, 2001. I finally bit the bullet and decided to go into corrections, actually, and managed to get myself on core training and went through. And yeah, I thought it was going to be one of those cash for life kind of jobs, because that's what everybody kept telling you. Hey, you just won the lottery, man. Congratulations. Right. It's like, oh, yeah, cool. Yeah. No, no, they fucking lied, man. They lied, and some people's careers go the way they want, I suppose. A lot of people don't, some people manage to come out and see very little and not have to be all that involved, and manage just to get through with the day-to-day stuff, which is bad enough. But for me, I kind of felt like I was, it's funny to say this now, but I kind of felt like the black sheep.
That's why people find us.
That is why people find us.
Yeah, we find the best people are lost in a world that doesn't seem to make sense to them. They don't feel like they fit. So you certainly fit the criteria to come find us.
Yeah. And I think that's one of the things, like, we commented on your size because it'd be handy for bouncing, but I think that was a thing we've touched on a few times too, where even, in the bar scene and in corrections, you were kind of called out upon because of your size.
Yeah.
And because of the fact that you had that stature.
Yeah. It's kind of something that, honestly, has followed me through my life. Not always good, that's for sure. Everybody sees the bigger guy walk in the room, and it's amazing how many guys go from being 5 feet tall to 10 feet tall in a hurry.
Yeah.
And I've dealt with it throughout my life. Like I said, some of that fighting in public school and high school and things like that all go just from silly shit like that, eh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but then, going into corrections was different. I took a different path than a lot of people, I suppose. I shouldn't say that. Maybe a lot of people start off at Kingston Pen, but a lot of people don't either, and it's a different world. It was truly a different world,
that's
right?
Like super, like the top of the top, maximum security, right?
Yeah, and it was different. It was hard to be the person that I was before I went in, and I wasn't even happy about that person, right? And coming out of it, I was way worse, way worse.
What kind of things, if you, in general, what kind of things? I mean, for those who haven't had that experience, what kind of things caused hardships in that role, especially when you're already dealing with your concept of who am I, or what's my value, like all that stuff about trying to figure yourself out. What caused more problems within the work world?
Well, because if you're the type of person who goes into it and you're already still trying to figure yourself out, you're really going to get lost. It doesn't take much. Like, it doesn't matter whether you're a sensitive person or an oversensitive person, like people like to say, or whether you're a hard ass. It really doesn't. There's things that will just catch you off guard. There's things that you think that you've seen it all until you see something else. Right. And that happened on a daily basis.
You're seeing
it plays on the brain, like it really does. And a lot of people, they'll try to say, it's all what you allow to happen to you. Well, you know what? There's some things you just can't help.
Yeah.
And a lot of people too, they'll go home and bury it all in a bottle of whiskey or, a case of beer, whatever their thing may be.
Yeah, self-medicate,
bottle of pills,
Yep.
Not knowing how to deal with it.
There's a lifestyle that comes along with it that you're expected to kind of follow along, right? Especially when you first come into the service, and you got to learn to adapt, right? You got to find your way. It's like it was like going back to high school.
Right.
It really was.
That's a good analogy.
It was. It really was, right? And sometimes dealing with these people, was like dealing with a bunch of school kids. And I would have said high school, but honestly, like, there was times where you were dealing with guys that maybe had like a kindergarten education up to university education.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I do have lots to say about it, but I don't think we have enough time in the world to go into all the stories, man. I wouldn't even know where to start,
Yeah.
The long and short of it was, it really impacted you on top of already being impacted as a young man.
Yeah, right. Yeah. And then one of the deciding factors when I went into corrections, and it was probably for one of the wrong reasons, was that I thought I could make a difference, right? I had a purpose in my mind that I was going to make sure that there was some guys that were just never going to get out, right? And then when I got in, I really quickly realized, you don't have a say in that. Right? What you think is irrelevant.
Yeah.
Nobody gives a shit.
Yeah.
Right? You could write in a report, you could submit 1,000 reports on a guy why he should never get out of prison, and the moment it hits a parole board table, they go, yeah, okay, parole granted.
Yeah. And you met a couple guys in there too that you've told me stories about, where it was like just stupid situations. They made some stupid moves, but were like genuinely, you could tell that they were good people. Yeah. But there was always a sense that you always kind of pointed to, that you could really feel and tell who were like genuinely good people, and who were people that were just bad people. Right?
For sure. There were those guys, right? There was lots of them, actually. But then once they got into the prison system, that was their lifestyle. Yeah. And some guys came out worse than they went in. Some guys didn't come out at all.
You hear a lot of stories like that.
There's a few young guys that I knew of over the years that, were doing 2 and 3 year sentences and were sent to a maximum security that was supposed to be protecting them. Mm-hmm. And they didn't get out at all.
Yeah.
Wow. And some of them died pretty horrific deaths. And at first I was kind of like, yeah, well, that's prison, right? Guess you shouldn't have did the fucking crime if you didn't want to do the time and you didn't want to come to prison. You should know what it was like. Yeah, that really, after a few years, you find that that wasn't really the case.
Yeah.
That's not really a fair judgment or fair statement to make, because there was a lot of guys too that a lot of mental health issues and things that I honestly believe, in working with some of them, that had the, I don't know, let's say the Ontario hospitals back in the, late 80s, early 90s that closed up, had those facilities never closed up, then some of these guys probably would never have had the opportunity to commit some of the crimes that they did.
Right.
Because after they closed up, they put them out into the public, into the group homes, and tried that approach. And then you put a lot of pressure on those staff trying to, medicate this person and that person. And I mean, and some of those people legitimately need those medications to feel better. So there was a lot of guys like that. They would never have done the things that they did had they been in a proper facility. But
I feel like there's a great analogy there for the prisons are kind of a microcosm of what a lot of people are experiencing in life. It's like they end up in a bad spot. They end up in a bad spot, and then they don't. The choices are kind of made around them, and they sometimes they just feel like, oh, I am that choice now, and they they take out of the world what they need, and they're not as
it becomes their identity.
Yeah, that's true. And a lot, you're right. A lot of those guys take on those identities, just like
to survive.
Yeah, and it's not just the inmates that do it,
right?
Like staff too.
Yeah, they're playing a role.
They have to. And it's a tough role because you're talking about walking into a place that's so unpredictable that you never know from minute to minute. You can tell yourself all you want. Oh, I know how my day is going to go. Right. Well, guess what? Somebody is always willing to offer you something different that day, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So
I feel that way about my own life sometimes. And it's not serious.
Well, that's just it, right?
Yeah.
Well. The expectations these days, right?
Yeah. Well, the expectations even placed. We talk about this as coaches. It's like we're not allowed to be sad or upset or have emotions because of what we teach. It's like there's a perfection.
When we have the down days, that perfection expectation of like, well, you're supposed to be happy all the time.
Yeah, you're not allowed to not understand, who you are and be happy all the time because of what you teach. And I feel like that's similar pressure was put on you as a guard. And
for sure,
it's tough. It's tough. How the world sees people.
Well, see, and the other thing is too, right? Is that. I don't know if you really want to get into talking about how messed up our system is, but but seriously,
it's a long road we could go down.
It really is.
It is a long road we could go down for sure.
People have no idea. You think as a taxpayer, if you're listening out there, as a taxpayer, there's a lot of shit you don't know, and a lot of people don't want to know because they pay other people to look after that for them, right?
Yeah.
As a taxpayer, you just expect that the courts and the judicial system all around, the policing, everything is going to go as you're told it's going.
Right, that you're protected by the bad guys.
Yeah.
That's fine. And
the reality behind this is that it's just too messed up, and it has been for too many years, and there hasn't been any that been able to fix it.
Yeah.
Right? Or want to.
That's right.
I see this kind of mindset with prison guards, but also people who are in other service, where like police officers and even doctors, nurses, people that work in healthcare systems that are taxed out and stressed by lack of funding and a lack of system structure.
Yeah,
that's true.
And then usually, like whenever shit goes wrong, they always go after the low man on the totem pole. It really does roll downhill, right?
Yeah.
So
Well,
I don't know. For me, though, when I didn't do nearly as much time physically as others have. It wasn't until, I don't know, maybe 3 months ago when I realized I didn't have to keep doing the life sentence myself.
Right. That you were a free man now.
Yeah. And I didn't have to keep worrying about it, because even after I left, right, I was always feeling the guilt of leaving my coworkers behind. I made friends, like good guys that I worked with. And
survivor's
I had this
guilt.
Literally, right? Like I'm thinking, these guys are in the shit today, man.
And so what changed? What changed to make you realize you didn't have to continue living that life sentence?
Well, it's just not worth it. Happiness. I just want to be happy. I'm 54, right? I consider myself lucky, right? Because a lot of the guys I know, and girls, a lot of the women and men that I've known in my lifetime that worked in the service, right? They worked their asses off for 30 years plus, thankless fucking job, because honestly, we're all just a number, right? You think you're special when you're in it, but honestly, you're not. You find that out when you get out. People will
you're replaceable.
Big time. People quickly forget about you. There might be a few that might sit around, your name might come up once in a while, but really, people have a job to do. They move on, right?
Yeah.
And so I had to stop focusing on like the work life, right? It was ingrained in my head, like everything that went on throughout my day in corrections, I was bringing it home with me.
Yeah.
It
right?
became your way. Yeah.
Everything.
Yeah.
The way I was talking to people, the way I talked to my wife, the way I was talking to my kids, my parents,
The way you
my
saw people.
friends,
Yeah.
and the no trust issues.
Right.
Yeah.
Just even to this day, like, even though I'm different than how I used to be, because believe me, folks, I am. I'm a lot different
We'll get
than
to that.
I used
We'll
to
get
be.
to that too.
Yeah.
We'll get to that.
I still have habits
Yeah.
that are hard to break, right? Like, I'm still that guy that sits with his back in a restaurant or a bar,
Yeah.
if I go in one. I hear people's conversations across the room, even though I'm not really listening to them. I'm still picking up on them. I pick up on people's gestures when they're walking down the street. I see the way a guy's holding his wife's hand, or the way he grabs her by the arm when he's angry, or things like that. And my automatic, there's something about me that, I don't know, goes off. Is you got to do something about that, right?
Yeah.
And it's taken me a long time since I've been out to, like, make myself stop being that person.
To let go of the let go of the best.
Yeah, like, you don't have to be a hero, man. There's other people out there, that's their job. Stay out of it, don't get involved. Now, mind you, I'm probably still gonna get involved.
Yeah, I don't think there's
Because
anything
I think
wrong with
I don't think there's anything wrong.
I think it was
That's
that.
one thing we love about you.
Yeah, the world needs more people willing to make it
Willing to step in and
at
actually-
times. But I think what
actually
you're saying is
protect.
you have more discernment and you're not looking for it the same way.
Yeah, exactly. Because before, I was using it as more of an outlet. Right?
Yeah.
Right.
If I saw something that was going on, I had a reason to be pissed off, a reason to get angry.
Right, justify where you were.
Yeah, for sure.
Justified anger.
And the thing was, I knew, even though I knew, that's what, you're not even mad at that, right?
Yeah.
It's none of your business. You don't care about that, right? You're angry about whatever, right?
Yeah,
And
life.
just life in
Everything
general.
else. Yep.
Humanity is just.
I had a couple of cop friends we talked about that felt that way, where they would. I was in the Starbucks with a friend, and he was not paying really eye contact with me. He was looking around the room. I said, "Where are you?" He said, "I'm looking around." I said, "What?" He said, "I'm watching people's hands." I said, "Why?" He said, "Because you look at people's faces. Faces can't hurt you, hands can."
Yeah.
And we talked about how to take off his superhero uniform when he's at home and put it back on when he went to work, because it's important for those out there and they're risking their lives to help society. And I think as coaches, we try to do that too. It's like we take off our coach's uniform when we're not sitting in a chair, but it's not as life threatening. It's like, it makes a difference. But when people have to pay, back to the wall, pay attention, listen, and have awareness like you had to for your own safety and the safety of others, it's a massive responsibility. And I think parents out there with children can feel that way. I think people who are in jobs, and to know that they're wearing hats, but their hat isn't who they are. And that's the biggest change I've heard and witnessed in you, is like you recognize the difference between a man that can step in to help and a man that always has to be on guard because he has to save the world and lose himself in the process. You're not doing that anymore. That's the beauty of it.
It feels pretty good.
Yeah.
It really does.
Because there's
I
one
didn't think
sense.
I'd say that, because you always feel like when you do something. Sorry to cut you off.
Yeah, no,
Andrew,
go.
But like I always felt good after I did something, right? It was
Of course.
Like, did you see that?
Yeah,
Looked after
feed the ego.
right?
Feed the ego, yeah.
But now it's like, I walk away or whatever, and I go, you have no idea.
It's true.
Like, I just did you such a favor by not even talking to you. Because the things that would come out of my mouth when I would go off on people for no reason, right?
Yeah.
I'd look across the room at my wife, and the look on her face would be like, "Oh, I did it again, didn't I?"
Yeah.
Right?
It's a Batman thing. Live long enough to see
But
yourself become the villain.
There's one thing that you two have that I don't think I've got it in the same sense as you. Like, you've talked about when you were in bar one time and you like sensed something was about to happen and you walked out.
Yes.
And then there was a stabbing that night.
Yeah.
And you've got
Massive
that
brawl,
same
too.
you've got that same kind of sense, because we've talked about that, where you can kind of feel things are about to go down, and
The
you just
energetic
know it.
sense of a room.
Yeah.
I'm not really going to go in the details on it, but I had that happen like, I don't know, about 6 weeks
It was
ago
recently,
now.
yeah.
Like, really very recently. And thing here is 4 months ago, that Greg would have gotten out of his truck.
Right.
And
been involved.
And
Yeah, and put his life at risk.
And I know I would have, right? And not like, I'm not bragging. I feel silly talking like that, but I'm just saying that's just the type of idiot I was, right?
Yeah, I'm not sure that's an idiot thing. I think
I just
it's important.
You did.
But anyways, long story short, I didn't. Yeah. I made a conscious choice. I looked over and I saw, and I went, that's not good, right? And I went, no, you know what? You're expected at home. Go home. And from the time that I was in front of the place to the time I got to the highway, shit had already happened.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And it was bad.
And so what, can I tell you what I see in that? Sure. What I see is a man who at one point was angry at the world, angry at himself, angry at everything that had occurred to him, and didn't care about himself enough, so he would jump in front of something like that.
Yeah, didn't see he was important.
But now you see the value in yourself, and you're willing to take yourself first, put yourself first, and your safety, your own protection, and your own safety, and you love yourself enough to walk away and not put your life at risk
when it's not necessary.
When it's not necessary.
Yeah, you're the kind of man that would help someone in need but
100%. This is the guy that, like, when I knew him for a couple months, I'd only known him for a couple months, shows up to help me move.
Exactly. And I know you're a very humble man. You have a hard time taking compliments, but like I said when I met you, it's like interesting to meet a real life hero, someone who, I don't think heroes wear capes. I think people who decide to do what's right for themselves and others, if we could all take a piece of that and know through discernment when to show up and when we need to protect ourselves, I think that's an important part. Because if there was more people like you, there'd be less issues for people that are in your world and in the world of service, like police officers and so forth. And so I love that you're in a place of, because now when you intervene, it's not to prove something, it's because something needs to be helped, versus the anger and the not enoughness that existed for you early on. And so that's an amazing piece of growth that you should honor.
And you're right, that not enoughness. I just didn't care.
Right.
There was no...
Who cares what happens to me?
That's pretty much how it was, right? There's no simpler way to put it than that.
Yeah, I think the number one thing we deal with in our work is like that not enoughness piece, where people feel like no matter what they do, no matter who they help, no one remembers the next day and I'm not important, and they're looking outside of themselves. Yeah. And the moment you start to look within and really own that your life was happening for you, and you saw the opportunity that you made those choices that other men wouldn't have, did we make bad choices as kids? Yep, that's the learning process. But that you've forgiven yourself and others, and you started to grow and understand that you're more than enough. And like I said, I feel so fortunate to be your friend, because you're a great man. You really are. Thanks, and so a lot of change.
I feel fortunate to find you guys. Like, seriously.
No, you hang out first.
You hang out first. No, I want to talk longer. You know what, though? It's not, I always liked people.
Yeah.
And then I went through like 20 years of my life. I fucking hated people.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Seriously.
They make it easy sometimes.
Well, I just read and saw and
saw the worst.
So much the worst shit that people could possibly do to one another. And that was before I even went into corrections.
Right. Take a second. For those out there, here we sit with a man that's seen the worst of human nature and still found a way to be love, and still had a piece of him that wanted to make a difference, and then realized in that journey that the biggest way to make a difference was to make a difference in his life too. Yeah. And not just others. And so for those of you out there that don't feel enough and you're looking outside yourself, realize that all you have to do is look within and start to express that more. And then people start to see it. And then things have changed for you so much in your relationships and your friendships.
Yeah, for sure.
You carry yourself differently. You're happier.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I am. It's weird. It is. You're smiling, Greg. Stop smiling. People are going to think you're up to something. No, because I was always the angry guy, right? I'll tell you guys straight up.
Yep.
There was like I had some of the worst nicknames that people could possibly fucking give you, like at work, right?
Oh, wow.
Like,
Yeah.
You know,
I didn't know this.
Oh yeah.
I don't think I knew
it's
any
'cause
nicknames
I don't
either.
really want to even talk. No, you know, people think they're being funny and they give you a nickname, and then all of a sudden it sticks with you, and it goes from the staff calling you that to the cons calling you that. Hey, the inmates are all, you know, and then
it becomes part of who you are.
It did, right? Like I had one used to call me Johnny Rage. Right? Johnny Rage, like a big wrestler name, or something.
And it's a cool wrestler name.
And at first it was a joke, right? At first they took it as a joke, but then it became like
an expectation.
It was like, well, where's Johnny Rage? Right? And then all of a sudden, I was like, you want to see Johnny Rage? I'll give you a fucking Johnny Rage. And it was easy. Like it was like a light switch, right? I could go from
step into that
feeling
role.
like I'm feeling right now to instant
blackout rage.
Yeah. Like to the point where I started doing things and thinking things, and it was like, you know what? This is just too much.
The cost of that afterwards is
my health really started to deteriorate. I ballooned up. When I first went into corrections, I was only about 230, 240, and I went up to 320.
Oh wow, yeah. So you were
and since I left, I've lost like 80 pounds.
That's another thing we notice when clients get happy, they lose weight.
They start to become more fit, like more of their natural physical form, right? They're just like healthier.
What's he looking at?
He said, Joe.
Is he trying to tell you something?
Joe's like, we have more work to do.
I think Joe slimmed down since we're together. A lot of people.
And then
we're not just a mental health program; we're a weight loss program too. Well,
and the thing is too, right? Like, and I never really thought there was much of a correlation between mental health and you know, your physical well-being, right? And there is, you know, stress definitely plays a huge role in your physical health.
Oh yeah, the body keeps score for sure.
It doesn't, doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It really does. I don't know where I was going.
Well, I think that's where a lot of autoimmune issues have come from, right? It's just like constantly being in that stress mode, right? The fight, flight, or freeze.
If you're in fear mode,
if you're in fear mode all the time, and science has already proven that, right? That
whole up down, like it's like, oh my god, you know. And there's only so much medication in this world a person can take before you.
Yeah, there's side effects to that, and
then there's it's like side effects. Well, then you need medication to cover your side effects.
Don't take this if you got this. And by the way, it could cause this, and you're looking, going, holy fuck, should I really be taking that? Like, they even allowed to say that on TV. You just named off like 100 other health issues I'd rather not have than to take that med.
Amen.
You know,
fair enough.
And so there was a time when working with Andrew and stuff. There's been shifts for you. What kind of things shifted for you, or is there any moments that pop for you that you? Because I know it's hard at times to look back at the journey, but
there was. And now you're gonna make me try to think of that part.
Yeah, take your time.
Take your time, man. Whenever.
Well, I'd always spent so many years of my life, like I was saying earlier, in more traditional therapy, where, you know, I was constantly, not that they were constantly telling me this, but I was constantly feeling that there was always an excuse or a reason as to why I'm feeling the way I'm feeling
I'm
now.
broken because of this.
Right?
Yeah. There's something wrong because of this.
And you, after a while, you become focused on that because, you know, it's kind of like, I guess they're right.
Excuse. Yeah, it's another reason.
Yeah, well, this happened to you, so that must be a reason.
I played footsies by accident for those.
That must be the reason why you're feeling a little blue today, or why you're, you know. But no, that being said, obviously, I believe in triggers, right? I have my own triggers. I'm sure we each have our own triggers. I think everybody.
We don't believe in triggers.
Yeah. Well, you may not.
But you do. It's okay.
But I still do.
We'll work on that. Okay. What is a what do you believe is a trigger?
there's things that take me back to places I don't want to be.
Oh, so you have the memories.
Yeah,
Memories. Things
like,
are
yeah,
memories.
like there's sense.
I was thinking more like how social media uses triggers. Like,
No,
I don't like
no,
this.
I
Or
don't.
it bothers
No,
me.
no, no. I don't get triggered by social media.
So, yeah.
Everybody else.
Yeah.
No, I'm not talking about shit like that. I'm talking like
memories, things that occur that bring you back to a place of problems.
yeah,
that's fair.
like yeah. I better not tell you that.
Why? We can always edit it out.
You can edit it out. I think I probably already told Andrew.
Yeah.
I'm not a big fan of coconut.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
And I loved coconut as a kid.
Yeah.
Like coconut
Yeah.
until I went into corrections.
And the smell of it.
The smell makes me
That's fair.
so sick to my stomach.
Yeah.
And the moment I smell
Like coconut oil.
coconut oil or coconut butter or whatever that's scented with a really strong coconut, I automatically I feel nauseous.
Yeah. Okay.
Right? But I don't it's not like oh my god, I feel sick to my stomach. I'm talking like
Yeah, you feel nauseous.
it takes me to a place where I don't want to be.
Yeah,
Right? It
yeah.
really does. And then I start dwelling. I start thinking about things in corrections that remind me, because I'm going to be honest here, it was corrections and coconut.
Yeah,
that ruined it
yeah,
for
yeah,
me.
right.
Right? I'm not going to go into the fucking details.
Yeah, we can imagine.
Yeah, we
Right?
can. Yeah, well, yeah. Some
Right?
things are okay to live up to the imagination.
But that is one of those things that sets me off, right? And it's something I've actually been trying to work on since it's funny, since I started talking to Andrew more. I find I push myself. Like the other day, I had a slice of carrot cake because I like carrot cake.
Yeah.
But they put toasted coconut on it, right? and I got it home. And my wife says, honey, you know there's a roasted or toasted coconut on this, right? I'm like, oh, for fuck's sakes, right? And I stand there in the kitchen and I'm like, I don't care. I'm going to eat it anyways, right?
Did you?
Yes, I did.
So that's the amazing. So notice. I just want you to notice how your thought creates the reality of that.
Yeah.
And without that thought, there is no reality. So when we live through creating our experience through our thinking, so the moment we can put down that thought and disconnect, we can have an experience that we create on our own.
Yeah.
And so that's why we say triggers don't exist. I get that they do in many ways, from memories and sense and all sorts of things. But when we realize that our experience is completely made by our thinking, and we know we're not our thinking, we can let go of that and realize that it's just coconut on the carrot cake. It's nothing else.
Yeah.
Which I know is hard, and I know you can work on, but it's really.
Man, I'm not sure you'd be feeling the same way if you knew and saw the things I'd seen.
That's a fair statement.
That is fair.
It really-
Yeah,
That is-
I don't know. I get what you're trying to tell me, Morgan. But I'm telling you, brother.
I reject your reality and replace it with my own. That's fair.
Yeah, just trust me. Okay? You'll be editing this whole thing if you get me going on it.
All right.
Trust me.
All right, I'm going to sidewind from the from the coconut conversation, because there was one thing I did want to bring up, because you had a couple of influential men in your life, that really brought you to like the understanding of spirituality. One especially was your uncle that was into martial arts. Can you share a little bit about like what that influence was like for you?
I don't know if I can do it without breaking down.
That's
That's all right. man.
okay with us. We'll cry with you.
And we can edit it. We can edit it if you don't want people to see it.
Well, like I had mentioned earlier, I didn't grow up with siblings, but I did have brothers or aunts and uncles that were more like brother and sister to me. And one of them, my Uncle Stuart, he was martial arts expert. He was recently, he's passed on now, unfortunately. And recently he was just, what do you call that, what do you call that, Morgan, when they grant somebody something even though they passed on?
Oh yeah, like a
Posthumous?
No, like a reward afterward. Post.
Yeah, there's a name.
I don't remember.
Anyways, they made him a 9th degree grandmaster.
Oh wow.
Yeah, he was already I don't know, 7th or 8th.
Wow.
Yeah, And I didn't grow up in a religious family by any means, but my uncle was probably the most spiritual man I ever knew. He didn't talk about heaven and earth and all those things. He didn't preach the Bible. It wasn't like that. He just practiced a very healthy spiritual lifestyle, and I had a lot of respect for him because he never, he never fell into the other traditional, I don't know, roles that I'd seen in
the dogmas.
Influence and that I'd seen throughout the years, coming from other men, if that makes any sense to you. Sorry.
Yeah.
It was just, and it was funny, as a kid, he used to kind of freak me out, because he'd always talk about mind control and things like that, and the afterlife, or he was a big believer in it's funny.
It's funny how the words disappear when you start looking for them.
His brain just shut down.
That's good. That's where we want you to be.
Really?
Yeah.
Not me. Where was I?
Just a sense of like how he was spiritually.
Yeah, but it was different.
What made it different? Like, outside of the labels and all that stuff.
Because people went to him, right? He was somebody that could always be trusted with everything and anything. People went to him for help with their marriages when they were lost in their lives, lost in world of drugs and alcohol and things like that. And he wasn't a counselor. He didn't take money for it. He would just sit and talk to them. He just sit and listen. No,
I'm just joking.
You know what I mean?
He was someone that people went to because he had a sense of insight and wisdom.
He did. And I remember when he passed, right? Like all these people coming out to me and telling me, and they remember me when I was a little kid, and how special my uncle was to them, and how he saved their lives, and how he changed their lives, and how he fixed their marriages, and how he fixed this and he fixed that, right? And I beat myself up for so long over it because I kept thinking, why didn't you just fucking go to him, right?
Why didn't you?
I don't know. Yeah. I guess kind of figured he had his plate full. Right?
Yeah, I wonder how many people are out there that don't call us or don't see us for the same reason. Like they're so afraid to experience something beyond that they believe that it's not possible or that they'll bother somebody.
Yeah,
but it's interesting.
Being an inconvenience,
right? Or that they're not enough to burden somebody because they think they're being, like it's almost like the heroic martyr, right? Like I can't bother people because. Who am I to ask for help, or who am I to understand something different that can make a difference? But I love that your uncle, like many people we work with and end up in the same place, they become a source of wisdom and insight when they're not their thinking, because they're free of this, reality that we call this illusion of life that we think is ingrained in that. And then all of a sudden they see it from another perspective that's so free that they become peace, they become love. And they can share that with others.
It was weird having them being around somebody that was like so spiritual and so loving and caring for everybody. He could snap your neck in a heartbeat, right? But he was literally like one of the most passive men I ever knew in my life, right?
Yeah, that's beautiful.
And I'm sure he had his moments. We all have our moments, and he probably didn't talk about them, but I never saw it, never acted out. He was always there for everybody, always willing to help.
Yeah.
I did. I looked up to him a lot. I really did.
For those out there, just take a second to recognize how powerful it is when you put down the story and you become the truth of who we are in love and understanding, and how much service you can provide from a place of selflessness and getting rid of your story and impact a man like this.
When he got sick, not sick, he had a stroke. That's what happened to him. He had a really bad stroke, and left him, I don't know, pretty much paralyzed on one half of his body, like it usually does with people. And And he tried to recoup from that, and everybody thought he'd probably pull through, but he's never going to be the man that he once was. He did pull through that, and to be honest, I don't know how many strokes it took for him to finally die. I think it was 5 or 6.
Oh wow.
Wow.
And I'm not talking minor strokes. And then he spent a few years in a home because he needed to be looked after, and I don't know what was going on inside his head. I felt so bad for him, things that he was seeing and hearing, and it's amazing, like when the brain suffers that much damage, what happens to a person. But then as that blood heals away, right, certain things start to come back, but then the next stroke you have, it just takes you right back.
Did he lose who he was as part of that? Or?
Oh yeah, he did. Yeah,
but he didn't become angry or bitter that way.
He did actually become more aggressive and angry.
Cool. Yeah,
but everyone knew it wasn't him, right?
I actually
wasn't him at all.
My uncle had a stroke in 2015. And I remember them telling me, because he spent 3 days before somebody found him. I was the one that actually found him. And I could tell he was still in there. Yeah. Like he was different, obviously, because he was paralyzed on one side. But I could see that he was still there. And I was trying to explain that. And the nurses and the doctors were all saying, no, he's like... he'll be brain dead the rest of his life. Like what he's saying doesn't make any sense. He doesn't understand what's happening. And I said, no. Like he knows for sure. And there was one point where like a nurse, probably around his age, was helping him out, and she was an attractive woman, and she kind of walked away. He was a single guy, and I looked at him. I went, "You want me to get her phone number for you?" And he just kind of laughed and shook his head, like rolled his eyes and shook his head. And there was a neurosurgeon standing there watching us. I didn't realize, and the neurosurgeon looks and goes, "He understood everything he just said." And I'm like, oh, thank you. I've been trying to tell you this. It was like 3 days that I was trying to tell people, like, he's still in there. He's just yes, everything else has changed, but there's still...
Yeah, the real him.
The real him is still inside.
It reminds me of that Team Hoyt video. If people haven't seen the guy that... Rick and... I can't remember his name. Team Hoyt was like the guy that ran the triathlons. He had CP, I think, the son. And he would pull his son in the boat and... It's a beautiful story. If you haven't seen it, look up Team Hoyt, and if you want to see a story about dedication and love, and how his dad, back when they used to put people in homes, his dad knew that. Yeah, and now his son has graduated college, and
he was born with muscular dystrophy.
That's what it was.
It's amazing, eh? The human body is absolutely amazing.
It's an interesting vessel that we have in this experience, but when we realize that we're more than just that we're that and something, it just gives us another form of experience.
Yeah. And you realize, regardless of what the human body looks like, you can still create an experience.
Right? What the hell was that book you had me read that was based on Adler's theories?
Courage to be disliked.
Courage to be disliked. Thank you. You couldn't think of that 20 minutes ago. Now I got to go back. Yeah.
Okay.
Because you asked me earlier, what was the one thing?
Yeah.
Did you not ask me that?
I did.
You asked me that?
Yeah.
It was that book.
Yeah.
Right.
That was my turning point, was that book. And could I read it? No. Why? Because I fucking hate reading. But guess what? YouTube. Hey?
You listen to it.
I can lay there, I can listen to it, and I can have somebody else read it to me. I listened to that probably 5 times, right? Between doing things in the house, whether it was cooking dinner or mowing my lawn that takes 3-4 hours.
So you got a big lawn.
I would listen to that book, and I listened to it over and over and over, and I don't know how many people out there have actually read this book or listened to the book. They've
sold 10 million copies. I've probably bought 1 million of them.
But I found that there was many points throughout the book where for people who don't know, basically it's a man,
a philosopher.
having a discussion with a young boy, right, and he's trying to explain things to him about Adler's theories. And
student says life is hard, and the teacher says it's not hard. You make it hard.
Well,
That's the basis.
There was many points throughout that book where I felt like that
which is
kid.
interesting. That actually brings me to something, because we talk about this on another one of our podcasts in the first season.
Yeah.
We talk about reading from need and not, or from knowing and not from need,
Right.
and how that book made a difference, but would it have made the same difference had we not have had conversations around it to help them?
No, I wouldn't even. Well, one, I wouldn't even have read it. I wouldn't have listened to it. I wouldn't have.
Yeah, that's fair. That's
Right?
fair.
I
Yeah.
wouldn't have.
It's not something you would go and seek out.
No,
Yeah.
and you're talking to a guy who spent 20 years pretty much listening more to Freud's theories as to what the hell
So
is
is
wrong
most of the
with me,
world.
right?
Yeah.
So is most of the world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
that's the problem.
and it was kind of nice to hear it from a different perspective and realize that, hey, you know what? That's kind of how you have felt most of your life, man.
Yeah. I love how
know?
the student portrays how most of Western culture feels like, they're identifying with that student in the story.
That and the argumentative part.
For sure.
Right.
That whole,
Right?
100%.
For sure.
Like, do you remember when we first got together and you tried to talk to me? Hey? Like, I'd look at him and I'm thinking, he's getting frustrated. He's not going to say he's frustrated, but I can see the look in his eye just changed. Eh? He's thinking, I got to put this guy in his fucking place.
Yeah.
No, that's called calculate. That was honestly what that becomes, because I actually enjoy that, because it helps me understand how to come from a different place and how to try, because I can try different angles to get to this before you finally feel it. And it's more about opening you up to that feeling.
Well,
And letting you experience that,
but-
and it doesn't matter how we do it. And you can argue with me.
No,
I mean,
I'm
Morgan's one of the
not,
greatest
actually.
arguers in the world.
I'm not going to argue with you, but because what ended up happening, Andrew, is that that allowed me. I don't know. You open up this. You made me stop and think. I thought, okay, I can either trust this guy right now,
Right.
or I can tell him he's a fucking idiot, and I'm out of here, right? And I didn't feel that way about you. So I wouldn't have done that, because I would have been rude, to begin with, right? But you didn't deserve that. You were honestly, genuinely looking out for my well-being.
Yeah, I think that's why it's not an argument. It's not like, we're trying to prove something. I think it's what we're doing is wrestling with identity because we only have two ways to communicate it. It's experience, and you start to feel the way you want, and that gives you insight, or it's through conversation, and it could seem it's not really an argument, because it's not us trying to prove, it's us trying to help you perceive it, not from your mind, but from experiencing it from a way of language. It's just very limiting, and things like the book with conversation really help I love that you listen to it so many times, because it becomes a new way of experiencing something that then you're like, you know what, this other way is not working. I ask clients all the time, how many times would I have to drive you to work if I showed you a faster, more scenic, safer route? And they're like, once. And I'm like, right. So every conversation after that, this choice you made, which you made by being part of our lives, that choice then becomes just about shifting the boat. Like a boat doesn't turn at a 90-degree angle, it drifts, and the drift of understanding to where you get is the conversation. So don't think we think, oh God, but a lot of times my clients will speak and I'll be like, nope, and I'll just tell them whatever they're saying is going to lead them in the wrong direction. And I had a friend go, you always interrupt me, and I go, yeah, well, if I was going to say let's go to Toronto together, and I start heading east, and you say no, you're going the wrong way, I say, excuse me, please let me drive all the way to Toronto before you tell me it's the wrong way. So it seems like we're really cutting at times, but we're just trying to efficiently get you to where you say you want. And so it's just about helping you journey to that spot. And so, yeah, we don't get frustrated that way, because the resistance, most clients, just like you, it's resistance, less. We talked last episode how sometimes very few, the resistance stays over and over, and it's almost like, and so this is another lesson, and I said this last episode, it's not just our conversations, it's the fact that you committed to this understanding when we weren't around. And that's the work that you did.
That really is the work, because it takes two. Like we can't drag you up the hill. You've got to be willing to walk with us.
And you did.
And you did.
So
and
kudos.
you were willing to take the walk up the hill, and it was an awesome journey to witness and be a part of.
As a third party, I love seeing it from the outside. It's really beautiful.
It's been different.
I feel like
it is.
Yeah.
Like
let's talk about the
I've
difference.
thoroughly enjoyed it. Right. Mm-hmm. I enjoyed the conversations. Things like that. But yeah.
So what was it like? We know what it was like before. There was a lot of not enoughness, a lot of anger, a lot of, disappointment. What's different now for you as we're getting close to the end of the podcast? What's changed for you the most? Outside of that smile on your face.
Just a different perspective on life. Try to look at things differently. Try not to get myself so involved in, other people's shit, to put it bluntly. Just try to focus more on not being angry at myself all the time. I think I told Andrew a few times, I don't ever need somebody else to beat me up. I beat myself up so much in my lifetime. Nobody else could kick my ass like I've kicked my ass. Right?
Yeah.
And now I'm at a point where, you know what? I don't beat myself up anymore. And I don't really let anybody else do it either. You know what I mean?
That's a big deal. Yeah.
Right? But in a different sense. It's not like...
you're not bullying yourself. You're not pushing yourself.
Exactly.
Yeah. There's a sense of enoughness in you.
And there is. And there's... I feel good about myself. Right? I feel like I've accomplished something. I feel like I've moved on from dwelling in the past and not worrying about allowing my past experiences to affect my life today and tomorrow and down the road. Am I going to have setbacks? Sure I am. Yeah. Right? I know that.
But
I know how to deal with those setbacks. So,
that's beautiful.
Plus, I know I got guys I can talk to.
You do.
Right?
You do.
Yeah,
well, I do.
Of course.
Yeah.
And it's really too bad. I know so many guys that would benefit from this, but I don't even know that I could convince them.
We don't want we never want anyone out there to convince anyone, but we just hope that when they hear people like you and they sit and they take time to hear this, that they realize that there's a possibility to experience life from a way of not suffering. They don't need to suffer through life, that they can experience with a lightness and a love that they've been looking for, and they are that experience.
Yeah.
One other thing too. Sorry.
Yeah, go on.
But one other thing was as well that I had thought about was that if more men, and I say men because I'm speaking to the men out there, right? Yeah. If more men took the time to take things like this more seriously and took the opportunity to improve themselves, then maybe so many of our women in our lives wouldn't have to.
Wow.
Maybe we could take...
That's a great statement.
Maybe we could take some of that burden away from those people that keep trying to help people like me over the years.
Mm-hmm. Like us.
Yeah.
You're right.
And just, give them something to look forward to as well. I don't know.
Yeah.
Men get a chance to step up and be the men that they deserve to be.
Yeah. It's not, you don't always have to be the tough guy.
I think with that,
that's a great
way to end this episode. Greg, thank you so much for coming in today.
Thanks, brother.
For those of you who want to check out more of what we do, check out blacksheepthinking.ca. Who knows, maybe we'll have Greg back because he has more great stories. Yeah. We can't thank you enough for being here.
Yeah, thank you so much, man. Really appreciate you.
Yeah, well, thank you. Thanks for everything, guys.
Thanks.
Yeah. And I would definitely come back. I got a bunch of stories.
Maybe we'll make a whole little segment.
We might
stories with Greg. I always call it stories with Greg. Every time I'm like, I love story time with Greg.
If we can change names and circumstances and things like that, just so
that's a good idea.
Because
that is.
I might be retired, but I still know what walks around out there. And and stuff.
All right. That's awesome. Well, thanks so much, guys, for joining us and listening or watching wherever you are. Thank you so much, Greg, for being here. And yeah, we'll see you guys next time on the next podcast.
Thanks.
Much love.
Yeah.